Um, Hi, everyone. Welcome to the exam cram for the DP-600 Fabrics Analytics Engineers. We have myself and Angie. Angie, can you please introduce yourself?
Hi, sorry, Wesley, and everybody else. Good old mic mute issues. Okay, so we are here to do an exam cram for the DP-600 Microsoft Fabric Analytics Engineer certification. Let's say a little bit about ourselves. I am Angie Rudduck, obviously already said that. I am a senior content developer here at Microsoft. I work in our certifications organization, which means that I helped develop all of the course content for DP600. So who better to talk about it? I also have my very dear colleague Wesley here, who saved me and helps teach DP600.
Yeah, indeed.
So here we go.
So, my name is Wesley De Bolster. I'm a Microsoft technical trainer. I live in Belgium, and I teach all kinds of courses, including DP600. So I'm excited to be here today, this morning, together with Angie.
Awesome. All right. And I think we'll just say a quick hi to our dear moderator, Krista Santos, who is also a Microsoft technical trainer. Of course, we are live and interactive, as you saw by my sweet mic mute issue. Go ahead and say hi in the chat. Tell us your expectations. This is an exam cram. We're going to walk through lots of information today, and we want you to feel comfortable that you are getting your goals met too. So go ahead and share. What are you looking for today from our session? While you're doing that, let's talk a little bit about those goals. We're going to talk about the path to certification. Now, this applies to all certifications, but we're going to focus on DP600 today. We're going to give you exam readiness information. We're going to talk through the skills measured specifically on the exam DP600. And then finally, we're going to give you resources about how to study and skill up to be successfully prepared to take the exam. All right. Think we're ready to go into our path to certification. Wesley, off to you.
Yeah, thank you, Angie. So yeah, maybe the first question that you should ask yourself is like, why? Why should I certify? Why should I invest in getting certified and doing this exam? Well, it's actually quite beneficial for you, and I can tell you, it opens up doors. There's a lot of potential here. If you want to be recognized as a person that is knowledgeable about Microsoft Fabric, it's definitely going to help you in your current job, potentially also in your future job if you are applying for certain jobs. And as you can see on the slide, we have like a couple of numbers here. I'm going to just read a few of them, not all of them, but just a few of them. 35% of the technical professionals say that they getting certified led actually to a salary increase. Now, that's not going to be your main driver, of course. You want to be skilled. You want to show off your skills. That's the main goal. But it certainly helps if you want to get into new opportunities. And I can tell you there is already lots of companies out there who have job openings available, where they actually already specify that they want people to be certified on Microsoft Fabric. So it's a great opportunity, I would say. Now, looking at a bit of the who is going to kind of be the target audience, like who is basically going to take this exam. Of course, everybody who is going to be involved into Microsoft Fabric and Fabric analytics engineers, they are going to be, of course, we're really interested in taking that exam. But there's also other kind of personas, other kind of job titles, let's say, that are also potentially interested in taking the exam. For example, solution architects. You want to get a good overview of the technology. There's different components in Microsoft Fabric, and you potentially also want to integrate with your on-premises data sources. You want to integrate with Azure, depending on how you want to pronounce it. And you want to get make sure that all of that is done in a secure way and take all of these considerations into account. Then we also have, of course, these different personas: data engineers, data scientists, AI engineers, or even database administrators who are going to benefit from using Microsoft Fabric, and who are also going to benefit from taking the exam and getting certified. And then finally, but not least, all of those Power BI data analysts that we have and that already use Microsoft Fabric today, even though they might not know it yet, because they are still they are used to work with Power BI. So that's basically the audience profile. And now, we expect you to be experienced, of course. If you're gonna get certified, you need to have a bit of experience in a couple of domains. And so if you take it, let's say, very simple, it's, well, you need to be knowledgeable about how do I get data into the platform. So ingesting data with all kinds of features and technologies that we have available. But it also comes down to, okay, how do I apply transformations to my data? Because your data is likely needs to have some validation, needs to be cleaned up a bit. You need to do some modeling probably as well. So we have different components and different features in Microsoft Fabric that allows you to do that, and you need to know those things. But it goes further than that. It goes also about being able to apply source control strategies, apply CI/CD pipelines, for example, or apply Git-based source control to all of the assets that you're going to create in Microsoft Fabric. We also require you to know a few programming languages, and this might be a little bit harder for some of you. I think that a lot of people already are familiar with the SQL query language, structured query language that we have been using for over, let's say, 20, 30 years already. Microsoft SQL Server and all of these technologies that already have SQL query language supported. But there's also a few other programming languages which are used in Microsoft Fabric and in Power BI. For example, the DAX programming language, which stands for Data Analysis Expressions. This requires you a bit to do some programming, and it might feel a bit uncomfortable for some of you. And so it makes sense to skill up on those programming languages. They are very, very powerful to do all kinds of calculations on your data. And then finally, we have also PySpark, so Python on Spark. And that might be even more challenging for a few of you. But I would say, don't worry, it's not that hard to learn the language, especially if you're using these modern tools like Copilots and ChatGPT. It's actually not that hard to learn. So I would say take a chance, try to get skilled up on those technologies. It's gonna definitely pay off if you want to get the maximum out of Microsoft Fabric. All right, next slide, please, Angie. So DP-600, it has been announced that the exam became available like in, what was it, January, I believe, somewhere mid-January, if I'm not mistaken. And it's right now in beta. We expected the exam to be launched in general availability somewhere in March. I don't recall the exact date, but it will launch soon, of course. So right now it's still in beta. But I would say if you're interested in doing the certification, you need to prepare for that. Of course, you need to think about, okay, I'm gonna plan it, but I need to also work a bit backwards and try to prepare yourself for that. Now, if you're like totally new to this, it's actually recommended to take a few steps back. And we have created this kind of certification path, let's say, that would make logically sense to you. It starts off by doing the DP-900 Azure Data Fundamentals exam. Now, this is not required, right? So we say it's optional, but it's actually highly recommended. Why? Because it gives you like that overview again of all the different Azure technologies that exist, which you potentially are going to interact with and integrate with within Microsoft Fabric. It makes sense to be skilled upon and that to be skilled upon that, and also to get certified. Now again, it's optional. It's not required. Next up, we have the PL300. That's Power BI Data Analyst, and also there I would say highly recommended to be certified. Again, it's not required. It's not like prerequisite for the DP-600. So make no mistake there, but it certainly helps. Because in the end, you will see that DP-600 is a little bit more challenging, and it actually starts off where PL300 was kind of, let's say, the intermediate step. Now DP600 is going a bit beyond that, and really builds upon that, and like making it like more enterprise ready. So let's go to the next part of the slide, where we then finally go into DP600. So you need to be getting ready for DP600. That's why we have this specific session. Now you've already also maybe attended a number of other sessions in the past. There were some sessions specifically on all of the study areas in DP600 prior to this event, which you can find, I believe, on the exam readiness zone. And also, if you browse the Fabric Career Hub, and we will share the links later on, you will find some more information on how to get ready for the exam. And then finally, when you're ready, you're gonna then obviously schedule the exam. You're gonna do the exam. You're gonna take the exam, and then hopefully you're gonna get certified in Fabric itself. Now, at this moment in time, it's still in beta. We will probably launch it somewhere in March timeframe. But that doesn't mean that you can't already schedule it. You can already do this. So maybe we should ask you a question here in the chats, and you can vote for this. You can basically take your phone, take a snap of the QR code, and tell us, like, where are you on this path? Like, are you probably here because you want to get certified, but where are you right now? What is this your first step, or are you already like have you already scheduled it, or is it something that requires you to start studying? Where are you on this? Let's open up the poll um, and see
Where are
what people are.
you on this, Wesley?
Yeah.
Where are you on this path?
Well, that's a good question, because I've actually taken the DP600 beta exam a few weeks ago. So obviously I'm a bit biased because working for Microsoft and teaching these kind of courses, but I actually took the beta exam. I'm still waiting for the results to come in. They should appear 10 business days after the exam has gone live. So I'm still waiting for it, and hopefully I passed the exam. I don't know yet.
Yeah, I would have to say other for myself, because I helped create the content, so it's kind of not right to say that I don't really have real world experience, because I have just use of the Fabric tool, and, well, platform rather. But I can't say that I have real world experience. I just do all the training side of things. All right, let's
Yeah.
see. A bunch of people have started studying. We have
Cool.
some real world experience. We have some folks who are ready to schedule. And I guess we did
Awesome.
not ask if anybody has already taken it, or if it's already scheduled. So I see some exciting stuff. People are scheduled for March 1st. Also, there was a question on when the exam goes live. Mid-March, the exam will go live out of beta, which is when Wesley will get his results on whether he passed or failed. As for everyone else who's already taken the beta, you have to wait another month about. So sorry about that.
And maybe it's also worth to call out for anybody who's on the watching live this session. The poll, it opened up in a browser probably. Open it up in a secondary tab and keep that tab open, because later this session we're going to have additional questions, kind of a bit of challenging questions to test your knowledge on Fabric. So keep that tab open, and then we can come back to that later. All right, so interesting to see that there's so many people already studying for the exam. It's really awesome, and even if you have already booked the appointment, that's even better. I would say for those people who have not yet booked the exam, just do it. Just book it, and then work a bit backwards and start to prepare and to plan for the exam. It's worth to do it, right? I think it's very very valuable. All right, let's go to the next slide, Angie, and let's talk a bit about the exam readiness. We offer you plenty of resources to to get you prepared for, or to help you to get prepared for the exam. One of the first things that we have is this study guide that you can find online. Um, we will share also the link in the chat window. It's a study guide that is specifically for DP-600 and contains the main study areas and a bit broken down into a little bit more bullet points on what individual items you need to know. Um, as part of this session, as part of this live session, we are actually going to focus a bit upon these study guides and focus upon the different study areas, let's say, that the exam is going to test you upon. What you also will be able to find is these exam prep videos. There is a few videos available for specifically for getting let's say that tell you like how to go for an exam, what to expect on this exam. Now we'll actually go through some of this content this session, so don't worry, we're gonna guide you in this process. And I'm happy to share also that since yesterday we have also some practice tests available for DP-600. Angie, can you tell a bit more about that maybe?
Yeah, absolutely. Super excited to announce that in addition to doing this exam cram with us today, you can go to the aka.ms DP-600-practice and go hit all of the practice assessment questions related to DP-600. I think there are 50 choices for you to go through, and it will give you kind of a scale to understand the different sections that we're going to walk through in this presentation, the different skill groups of which section you want to do a little bit more, a little bit less of.
It is important, however, to set some expectations about these practice assessments. They are not like the real exam questions. So it's good to study, it's good to prepare, but just keep in mind that those are not the real questions that you get on the exam.
I would say, Wesley, to that, nothing is an excuse for real world experience, right?
Exactly. Yeah. But they definitely help you to learn maybe on things that are kind of like these black spots in your brain that you don't know about. It could be an interesting way to learn more about the areas which you don't know yet about. Huh? So it's great to go through these. All right, next slide, please, Angie. So what to expect on the exam? The exam itself is about 40 to 60 questions. We can't promise like upfront like how many exact questions you're going to get, but usually it's somewhere between 40 to 60 questions. Not all of these questions are the same. They're not like in the same format. We'll go through a quick demo in the upcoming minutes. You can expect a different kind of questions there. And I would say if you're scheduling the exam, make sure that you plan at least for 3 hours, more or less. The actual time for the exam is about 120 minutes. But we say take like 3 hours because there is a bit of prep work that is necessary. Before you can enter the exam, there is a bit of documents that need to be verified and a few things that needs to be verified by a proctor. So take like 3 hours at max. And I can tell you it's more than enough time. It's more than enough time to complete the exam. So don't worry too much about time itself. You're gonna be good on that.
One quick thing on that, Wesley, is it's not 3 hours to sit for the exam time, right? You're saying that 3 hours is before and if you need anything after you've hit submit your exam, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So in the upcoming time, in the upcoming minutes, we'll go through some demo. But the question types are actually more than just multiple choice. And so there are all kinds of questions that kind of question formats or question type, let's say, that we use to test your knowledge. However, there is one specific one that I want to call out, and that is the case studies. You will likely get also some case studies on the DP-600 exam. For me personally, I got 2, if I'm not mistaken. Might change in your case, might be 3, might be 1, it can be anything. These case studies are a bit more complex, and they try to test you upon, okay, can you see the connections between certain requirements, between certain questions, between certain domains. And it's interesting to go through this. Again, we will go through a quick sample later on. All right. Next slide, please. Yeah, exam scoring. The cut score is, or the passing score is always 700. So that's 700. The maximum that you can get is 1,000 points, but it's actually not 700. It's kind of not like 70%. Don't worry about it too much. But for every Microsoft exam that we have, the passing score is always 700. That's how it is. And what is important to mention about this is that if you don't know the correct answer, you can guess. And if you fail to answer it correctly, we're not subtracting points. So you're only getting like points for the things that you answer correctly. So again, don't worry too much about the 700 during the exam, but at the end of the exam, you will immediately see whether you pass or whether you fail if you're not doing a beta exam. The cut score is determined during the exam development, is based a bit on the skills of the target audience and the difficulty of the item pool, may be updated also in the future. And if you do the beta exam, you will likely get the score about 10 business days after the exam. So that's when you should get the results, and I'm also waiting for that myself. Again, no points are deducted for wrong answers. So I would say don't overthink things. Try to go with your gut, and if you guess, there is no penalty for that. So better guess than if you really don't know the answer, just guess, and then maybe you get still some points for that. Some of the questions are even worth more than 1 point. So there are questions, for example, where you need to select multiple answers. We will tell you like how many answers you need to select. Potentially, you get more points for that as well. All right, let's actually go through a demo. We have set up a short demo. It's not specific to DP-600, by the way. Could we switch over to my screen? I'm going to show you the exam demo environment. So here is how that exam demo environment looks like. Before you get into this screen, there's a few more steps required, and we'll talk about that a bit later, where you need to, of course, sign into the exam. You need to come up with your credentials. You need to probably also take some pictures of your government-issued IDs and so on before you actually get access to the exam. But this is how the exam itself potentially looks like. Again, this is a sample. These exam questions that I'm going to share with you has nothing to do with DP-600, just to make sure that we are all on the same page. So first off, you have this certification exam agreement that you basically need to read, and it's kind of a message here that says like everything what's included here is Microsoft confidential. It's proprietary information, is protected by intellectual property laws, and so you're not supposed to take any questions out of the exam and put it on a brain dump somewhere on the public internet. That's not supposed to happen. Okay, that's what you actually agree upon. So in this specific example, we only have like 10 questions, basically to show you what kind of what the format would be of these questions. And you can immediately also see that we have this exam minimum score to pass, and that's 700. So here we have then a bit more information about the way that the exam is going to take place. For people who have already done the exam, this is something that you're likely not going to be reading, but for the first time, you really want to make sure that you read all of the text here carefully, because it contains information about timing, contains also information about unscheduled breaks, and we'll talk a bit about that later. Ready to go for the exam? Here it is. So as you can see, we have at the top this timer, which is clock is ticking away. You will get, of course, 100 minutes to complete the actual exam, but you will see that the time is gonna tick off, and you will have also your overall exam progress, which shows you how many questions you still have to do. The question here itself, I'm not going to read it out aloud, but basically you should always read the question carefully, because there is always kind of like information in there that clearly is going to determine what kind of answer you need to select, right? So there is no doubt about it. There is always, in this case, exactly one potential answer that's correct. So I'm going to just go ahead and select an answer without even reading the question. That's not so important for now. In this question, you will see that we have two items that we need to select. I'm going to take oranges and grapes, if that's okay with everybody, and click next. Now, let's imagine that you need to go to the bathroom. It can happen. So we allow you to take an unscheduled break. You don't have to ask to the proctor or so. You can just take a break. What happens when you take a break is that the time will still take away. So keep that in mind, that even if you go to the bathroom, the time is still going to tick away. And secondly, what also is very important to note here is that when you return, you will not be able to go back to the earlier questions before the break. And that's, of course, to make sure that you're not cheating. Okay, so if you take a break, you can do that. You don't have to ask it. You can just apply for the break here. But then also keep in mind that when you come back, you will not be able to go back to the earlier questions. You can continue with the next questions, of course. That's how it goes. Here's a question where you need to drag and drop some items onto the answer area. As you can see, I can move my screen a bit around and make these panels a bit larger and smaller depending on how I want to work. And I'm going to just complete some of these again without really reading the answers over here. All right, so let's go to the next question. So yeah, the screen size here, you can see that the screen is of course adaptable. You will need to sometimes make these panels a bit larger or smaller depending on the size of your monitor. And now also that you can apply for high contrast if that makes you feel more comfortable, if that helps you to concentrate better or to view the exam, the text and so on a bit better, you can actually do that. And we will talk a little bit later also about requesting for accommodations. So we actually allow you to also request certain accommodations depending on. So here we have a question where we need to just put, in this case, what is it? 5 items, 5 tasks. So not all of them. And we need to also arrange them in the correct order, right? I'm not going to read the answer here correctly. It's probably completely wrong. If I start with pickles and add the mayonnaise at the end of it, it's obviously not going to be a good sandwich. Anyway, here's a question where you potentially need to select some items. It looks like a screen. I don't know whether you're going to have this in the Microsoft Fabric exam in DP-600, but this could be potentially a kind of a question that we get as well. Here we have a question where you need to select multiple items out of a drop down that contains some options. Again, look at the answers and carefully decide which one is correct. And then click next. Now, it can happen that you're not sure about a certain answer or a certain question. What you can do is you can review this for later by just clicking on this checkbox here. Um, and at the end of the exam, you will have then an opportunity to come back and review those questions and change your mind if that makes sense to you, if you want. Now, again, I would say go for your gut feeling as much as you can. Your first guess is probably the one that's correct. You can, of course, change your mind, no problem. And that's why we have this review later option over here. And by the way, it could also be that that you want to leave some feedback. That could be feedback about the question itself, that it is not accurate, technically accurate. Could be that there is a typo. Could be that the answers are not 100% correct, and that you want to leave some feedback, and you're welcome to do so. I do this all the time, especially when I'm dealing with beta exams. I leave feedback so that the exam can be improved for the next person that comes after me. So that's something I can do, and I can, of course, check that option. All right, let's go for a few of these items. Click next again. And here we have this case study. Now, case studies are a bit more challenging. So a case study is like you have quite a lot of information that you need to absorb. Usually you have some overview, have some existing environment with some existing information about the data center, about a data landscape, whatever we have. You have some problem statements of a particular company, and then we usually also have some requirements, both technical, business goals, planned changes, etc., etc. So, and out of that question, out of that case study, you might have then multiple questions that are going to be asked to you. It could be that you have like 2, 3, 4 questions on the same case study. My recommendation here is to first go and read the question, and then start to look for the answer in the text. That's my recommendation. I'm not sure about you, Angie. How do you do this kind of these things?
I do exactly what you do, Wesley.
Yeah.
Thank you for so my very first Microsoft official course aligned with a certification was 13 years ago. And when I did that, the instructor told me the same thing. There is so much information in these case studies.
Yeah.
And our exams are not intentionally tricky. But if you're not super familiar with the specific thing being tested, it can feel tricky, right? If you don't know what it is, it feels tricky. So a lot of people, comment, oh, it's trying to trick me. But we don't do that in our exams. It may feel tricky if you don't know it. But if you read through every single one of these pieces of information in the case study, you're going to forget some of it, right? So I always like to, personally, I read the answers first, and then I read the question and see if it just makes sense to me. With case studies, it doesn't work that way. So then I go through and I look for instance, I'm seeing here that this is about what component should I recommend. So now I need to figure out what kind of components may be needed, right? So where can I find components? And that's where I'm going to start thinking through what information do I need to answer the question, not what all information is in front of me. It's the same kind of thing as if you are implementing, for instance, a Fabric environment, you don't need to know what a Custo KQL database is, not for DP-600. But you do need to know about a lakehouse. So let's focus on the lakehouse in the case study, not the KQL database if it was there.
Exactly. Thanks for that addition, Angie. So let me proceed. Again, from my experience with DP-600, I got two separate case studies. It might vary in your exam. It might be that you get only 1 or 3 or whatever. It can change a bit. And every case study usually has like three questions as a minimum. If you don't answer, then you get, of course, a warning about that, and then I can cancel and then select my correct answer. Could also happen that we are sharing some screenshots, exhibits we call them. Nothing very special about this. Just look at it and then read the question and then answer it correctly, of course. All right, so here we have the last question. Again, depending on your screen resolution and your screen size, always validate whether you have selected all of the answers. If not, you will get that warning message, of course, but you have to pay a bit of attention to that. At the end of the questions, you have then an overview screen that shows you how many questions you have answered, how many you also checked for review, and then you can click on those questions and go back to it. Right. So here you can then go back to that question. Now, obviously, when you have taken a break, those questions you will not be able to go back, right? So that's not going to be possible. And if you're done with the review, you click on or you select this item here, this icon, which goes back to the overview screen, and where you can then finish the exam. And yes, we are sure to go end the exam. We're going to thank you for that. And then if you click next, you can then have the opportunity here to provide some feedback. Again, you don't have to do that for every individual question, but especially those that make sense to you. If you want to provide feedback, we are listening to your feedback, and we are going to look at it and potentially correct the question if it was not correct, or make some modifications to make it more clear to everybody. So we are listening to the feedback. In this case, I'm actually going to exit the exam, and then finally I get my passing score. Oh my God, Angie, I got only like 100 points, so I failed the exam.
And you should have started with the bread, clearly, although I would be very interested in a pickle first sandwich, let's just say. I want to call out one thing that this exam, or two things really, that this exam demo does not include. But the first one is there is a chunk of questions in an exam, and I don't remember how many, and it may change per exam. I haven't sat an exam in a couple of years. But there's a chunk of questions that when you are answering it, you get a flash on the screen that says, once you start answering questions in this section, you cannot go back even to the last question, and you cannot mark them for review. This is because the questions and the answers build on each other, for lack of a better word. So if the first question is, do you want, you're implementing a fabric environment, do you pick a P1 versus an F64? I don't remember what the SKU numbers are. But you pick between one of those two. And in the next one, it says, in your fabric F64 capacity, you do blah, 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 blah. So the answer to the first question's in the second question, or sometimes the other way around. So it's really interesting to think about how that can be, how you really need to make sure you're answering those questions and taking your time, and that you won't be able to go back. So you can't mark them for review. And that's the last bit on that. There were two questions that came out of the chat that also caught my eye about marking questions for review. I think that when I approach an exam, I try to answer all the questions that I confidently feel I can answer first, and then I will mark for review and come back to the other ones later. If I feel like I can't answer all of the review questions at the end, I might take some wild guesses. To Wesley's point, you don't get, points deducted for non-answered questions, but you don't get points at all. So it's better to get even 1 point. Take the risk, right? Take the risk of a question and an answer rather than skipping the question altogether. And then I feel like the best question is answered on our next slide. So if we can go back to my slide screen, please. One of the questions was talking about Microsoft Learn. Wesley, can you tell us a little bit more about using Microsoft Learn during the exam?
Yeah, happy to talk about that. Since I believe September, it was announced that we allow you to open up the Learn documentation, the official Microsoft Learn documentation. You see a screenshot on the slide here. And there is basically a button somewhere in the center of the screen at the bottom that allows you to open up the Learn documentation, and it opens up side by side. I really encourage you to try it out. It's really valuable. Now, there's a few important remarks about this. So anything that's under the learn.microsoft.com domain can be accessed during the exam. You can't access anything else. So if you try to, let's say, go to a GitHub repository, or you want to go to I don't know what, a forum to ask questions, that's obviously not going to work. Only the domain learn.microsoft.com is going to be accessible. So my suggestion here is to play around a bit with the learn.microsoft.com. Try to make it your own. Try to be good at searching for information. There is plenty of information in there that you have available at your fingertips. Now, at the same time, I also need to warn you a bit. Like, if you're gonna open up the Learn documentation for every question, you're not gonna have enough time. So that's not gonna work. It could help if you open up the documentation, let's say for looking at maybe there was a command, a PowerShell command or something that has some parameters. Well, it may be handy to open up some documentation to look at what are these parameters and what are they supposed to do, because that's things that you can't remember. That's also something that we're probably not gonna test you upon. But again, try to master everything what's in learn.microsoft.com, so you can clearly you can navigate through the whole documentation and through all the materials that we have, and that includes even the Learn modules that we have and the learning paths. So all of them are publicly available and can be accessed during the exam. But again, don't use that for every question, because you're going to run out of time. That's basically it. So really interesting. All right, so what to expect on the exam day itself? There's going to be a few things to call out here. If you book the exam, you're gonna schedule it at a certain date and time. Now, when you're about to start the exam, you have to check in, and that check-in process opens up 30 minutes in advance. And so really take the time to go through that check-in. There is a few things which you need to do, including, for example, if you take the exam at your home or office location, you need to make sure that your desk is completely empty. And you also need to make sure that you will prove with an identity identification that you are who you claim you are. Right, so you have to actually take some pictures of your surroundings and a picture of your passport or identity government issued ID to show you really that you are who you claim you are. So that takes a bit of time. That's why we say we need to check in minimum, or let's say a minimum of 30 minutes before the actual exam takes place. Also, make sure that you read the instructions carefully. There are plenty of instructions that we're going to send out to you via email, but also during the check-in process on what's allowed and what is not allowed. There are some technical requirements. There are some other requirements that you need to make sure that they are satisfied. So please take the time to go through this in depth and make sure that you're well prepared. It goes about having access to a good network connection, but also having access to a web camera. Making sure that you're always on camera, because you're gonna be taped, you're gonna be recorded during the exam to make sure that you're not cheating, right? You need to have some audio, some microphone to be able to do the exam. So there's a few technical prerequisites to this. Now, when you're doing the exam, all good. Again, try to go through the exam with all the tips that we already shared with you. And at the end of the exam, you will actually receive your results as well immediately, as I showed you. I failed with this exam. And again, notice also that during this period, DP-600 is still in beta, so you will not get your results immediately until 10 days after the exam has gone live. And then in the future, when it's already gone live, you will get immediately also your results, and then it's time to celebrate. Of course, you will get a badge from Microsoft. You will get also a recognition. And that badge is something that you can, of course, put on your LinkedIn profile and show it off to all of your colleagues that you passed the exam. So it's clearly something that you want to keep. And we will, of course, record that also in a transcript, which you can share with your future employer, if that makes sense to you. All right. Any other thing that we need to talk about, Angie, before going a bit more into the skills?
Absolutely. We got to give some tips for success. Like, for instance, you were just talking about having your ID ready. I haven't taken an in-person exam since 2018. So I can't speak to how it goes anymore in person, but I do know that at home, for instance, my pictures would not be allowed. And I don't even think a headset would be allowed, because when I've had to do it, I've had to use my laptop only. The webcam has to be my laptop webcam. I can't have any peripherals connected. Also, I got in trouble a couple times by one of my proctors because when I'm thinking, I go like this, and I cover my face, and I could be muttering or murmuring or doing something. So they came off mute and told me, like, don't cover your face, which was very jolting. So just be aware of that. I did see some comments in the chat about how many screens you can have. As far as I'm aware, you can only use your laptop. Now, of course, if you're using a desktop, you will have an external monitor. But I've never tried that, so I can't speak to that.
I actually have multiple monitors set up here, and I need to unplug them so that they're not powered, and I even put up some clothes or some other things over on it so that it's that's not possible to use them at all.
Mm-hmm. I saw some earlier questions in the chat, just running through this. There were some earlier questions about accommodations. We actually have really great accommodation opportunities. There's a link dropped in chat, and you can see the AKA link on the screen. Check them out first. There may be something really simple. Like I saw something about, I can't remember what the question was, but it felt like something that might be covered. So check them out. I don't remember all of them, but take a look. I also see some comments about turning off your virus software. Definitely do the tech check well in advance. Get on early, at least 30 minutes. Like Wesley said, you can check in as early as 30 minutes. It's okay to do that test, check, system requirements before then, right? If you can, do it as early as you can. Be ready. Have your space prepared. I have covered my desk before because I have an external monitor plus my laptop. I've covered my desk with a blanket before so that there was nothing around. So when I have to take the pictures of my space, it was all covered as necessary. Also make sure you're in a comfortable spot, right? You're going to be sitting there for a while. Like, be comfortable. Don't sit yourself up in a tiny corner just so that it meets the needs of the room and then be uncomfortable the whole time. I don't know, Wesley, you have any other tips?
Yeah. So again, make sure that you're not wearing any of these smart watches. Make sure that you take away your phone, that you don't have it in any arm's length, that you don't have it available. Make sure that your room is empty. In my case, actually, I even had to remove my dog from the room, and I can tell you she was not happy about that. But these things happen all sometimes, and so just make sure that you follow the instructions from the proctors. And there is, of course, also documentation about this. And so on aka.med/online exams, you will find out more information about all of these different requirements when it comes to taking the exam at home or in the office. So please make sure that you follow these steps, and everything is going to be good. So don't stress too much about it. It's all going to be fine.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say one of the other things, other than covering my face, the other thing that really caught me was having a cup, right? Because of course, I'm going to get thirsty in 2 hours. I don't know about you all, and maybe I drink too much water, or maybe coffee. What's your drink of choice?
In the morning, it's coffee. In the afternoon, it's tea.
Yeah, right? So what's your beverage addiction, folks in chat?
Yeah.
Whatever it is, it has to be in a clear container. So if I want to drink my water because I need a lot of water, I can't bring that cup. So make sure that you have the right container for a cup. There were some questions about the breaks. Wesley did a great job showing the breaks in the exam demo experience. Also, check out the online exam link because it does give you the advice. There's 5 minutes built into that 2-hour exam time so they've removed a couple questions to take that break. But you have to make sure that you recognize you're really only accounted for 5 minutes, and always doing that pause. Because as somebody mentioned, if you don't pause, it could be seen that you're just abandoning the exam, right? So you want to pause to make sure that the proctor knows that you intend to step away, not just you disappeared. I think that's pretty much it for exam day tips. And I see lots of tea in the chat, but I see that a lot of you guys are some skilled, certified people out here. So what tips do you have? Share in the chat. Let everybody else know what they can be doing better. All right. We've covered a lot about exam readiness. I think here comes possibly the dreaded part where we talk about all the things you need to know to pass this exam. You ready, Wes?
Yeah, of course.
All right.
Yep.
So our skills are broken down into different groups. We have 4 groups for the DP-600 exam. These are broken out into plan, implement, and manage a solution for data analytics, prepare and serve data, implement and manage semantic models, formerly known as data sets for all my old Power BI folks, and then explore and analyze data. So let's walk through each of these and what percentage they're going to have on your exam. So how impactful they are and where you need to really study. Our first one, plan, implement, and manage a solution for data analytics. Not only is it a mouthful, it's actually only 10 to 15% of your exam, which means if you had 50 questions, you're going to have 5, maybe 6 or 7 questions, if I can do my math correctly. So just know it's not going to be a huge part of the exam, right? But talking through this, planning a data analytics environment. When you're doing this, what you're really doing is you're considering which capacity, what features you need. Are you doing Fabric capacity, Power BI capacity? You can toggle them on and off, right? So there will be an opportunity to have just Power BI still, which not everybody is ready for Fabric. You also want to know tenant level settings. DP-600 candidate is not expected to be a tenant level admin, might be, but you're not required. So you may not have the opportunity to do the tenant settings, but you need to at least be able to recommend them to be turned on or off, which means you need to be comfortable with them. There's out on Learn, there in the docs, you'll definitely be able to get this information. You also need to know about data gateways, what's available, whether or not you're using them, and which one to choose. And this one, for me, feels a little out of place, but if you think about it big picture, when you're planning a data analytics environment, you're probably in an enterprise organization, and you want consistency, right? So you also need to be able to create custom Power BI report themes and then share them with everybody so that all your Power BI data analysts are using a consistent flow and understand what the theme for your organization is. All right, let's talk a little bit more about this second one, implement and manage a data analytics environment. You have to be able to actually create it, right? Deploy this, determining workspace permissions. This is going to be a big part of this section. Understanding the difference between workspace roles, item level sharing, also understanding for item level sharing, for instance, sharing experience for lake houses and warehouses looks very familiar to OneDrive if you haven't seen this. You just click on the specific item in your workspace and you share, and you can choose whether you're giving them the SQL Analytics endpoint, whether you're giving them ability to build on the semantic model, all sorts of different things. You need to know sharing. let's see. Also with that, there's the rule of least privilege, right? Don't give everybody the keys to the kingdom. Wesley, do you have any advice for anybody about whether or not they should give workspace or item level permissions?
Yeah, so make sure that you know all these different roles that we have in the workspaces. So we have the admin role, we have the member role, the contributor role, and the viewer role. Make sure that you understand those well, and what are the implications of signing these permissions to people. And also know that you will basically get access to everything in the workspace essentially, unless you do item level sharing. Then you're going to only share individual items with some permissions. So know those differences is going to be very important on the quite important topic on the exam. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say for our Power BI folks, you already understand workspace role and sharing through an app. Apps are still available in workspaces.
Yep.
It's a little bit different using the app for the Fabric items. But for people who may not have experienced Power BI sharing, it's really important that you understand the differences here. So our last skill in this group is managing the analytics development lifecycle. This is more about continuous integration, continuous deployment, or development, depending on where you say it, but CI/CD, right? In Fabric workspaces now, you can turn on Git integration. So you can use Azure DevOps for a full deployment, but GitHub is also supported. There's deployment pipelines within the different workspaces. And also Power BI projects, the PBIP, like power, that file. Those are newer. So make sure you're familiar with using those. Also recognizing how the downstream impact for the items in the workspace work, right? So how are people, what's the performance of your lakehouse or your warehouse down to report? So you need to be able to, for instance, use the lineage view and capacity metrics app to make sure you understand what this impact would be to downstream. And then wrapping with different reusable assets or items like Power BI template, PBIT for template, and Power BI data source, PBIDS for data source, and shared semantic models. We already know how to create semantic models by using Power BI, or you're getting the default semantic model with your lakehouse and your warehouse. Being able to share those and give people a single place to create reports off of the data. That's really what this analytics engineer role is in the first place, right? You are curating an amazing opportunity of data for people to come report off of. You may also do some really great data viz. I'm sure many of you are really great data viz folks, but you need to be able to do the underlying data prep. I guess the last thing that I want to mention here is the XMLA endpoint. Understanding the XMLA endpoint and enabling it, there are two different places that it is covered in this overall exam. Here, you just need to be able to understand how to manage and deploy semantic models using the XMLA endpoint. But at another time, you'll need to understand the difference of when you'll want read, write, and how to connect using the endpoint itself. Anything you want to add about what I just said? There was a whole lot of me talking, Wesley.
Yeah, and there was a lot of abbreviations which are really difficult to pronounce, even for myself as well. So you just keep in mind, people, that you can always consult this study guide that we have available online, where you can also revisit all of these different skills and different study areas for later retrieval and for studying for the exam, of course. One thing that I wanted to add to this is we have these semantic models, or what was previously called data sets. We have also this ability to promote and certify them, and so to make them really reusable across our organization, and even allow people to discover these items. That's also one of the topics that could be potentially included in here in this study area. Shall we go to a question, or what shall we do?
Shall. So
Yeah.
it wouldn't be a proper exam cram if we're not giving folks an opportunity to try to answer these questions. So here is a sample question of what you might get for that group of skills: plan, implement, and manage a data analytics environment. So the question is, your Fabric-enabled workspace has several items, including a lakehouse, data flows, notebooks, and Power BI reports. If you add a user to the workspace role contributor, what will the user be able to do? Can they A, create and edit items, but not manage the workspace? B, manage all items with full admin rights? Or C, view all items, but not create or edit items? What do we think? Let's see. I see some questions falling in. Wesley, do you have any advice on how to answer this question for our viewers?
For me personally, I wish I would be administrator everywhere, but of course that's not going to happen. So yeah, again, we have those 4 roles available at the level of the workspace, and with those roles, we have a number of permissions that you will get. So you have to basically remember what the contributor role can do, and so let's see here in the answers, what are people actually saying? Well,
I think our viewers are spot on. They're definitely going to pass this section.
Cool.
34, 35 people. So 95% of the viewers, voters, agree that A, create and edit items, but not manage the workspace, is the correct role, is the correct function of a contributor role. So great job, folks.
Good.
We'll have to see how you can keep going. All right, let's take a quick pause, see if anybody has really interesting things in the chat. You're all very, very interesting, but let's keep seeing more skills, right? Okay, so this next one, it's a big part of your exam. 40 to 45% of your exam is going to focus on preparing and serving data. This is the number 1 skill in this exam, right? How do you take data, transform it, and make it servable to downstream users? This is really different from PL300, because PL300, while we expect people to be able to make some transformations in Power BI desktop, we never expect them to go upstream, right? And we definitely expect them to then create the reports and publish out to workspaces and manage from there. So let's talk through what people who may be certified in PL300 need to know to now become certified for DP-600. This is really going to include code. So Wesley, I'm really going to lean on your advice here when you took the beta exam. But let's walk through these different ones. You need to know how to create objects in Lakehouse or Warehouse. This means creating tables, bringing data in. This means using shortcuts, different data ingestion methods, file partitioning for Delta Lake tables, adding new columns or tables, creating views, functions, stored procedures. There was a question in the chat earlier that I saw. Hey, the beauty of Fabric is you can do everything with the data flow. It's Power BI plus, right? And that's true. But we have Fabric here where you can do everything 3 different ways. It's a very Microsoft product. There's at least 3 ways to do anything. What this means is we really expect a DP-600 candidate to be able to do it in any of these 3 ways, which means we need to know where you know how to do it. So you are going to get tested on how to do many of these things in a data flow, a pipeline, or a notebook. So you need to know how to use PySpark, how to use Power Query or M, which is using a data flow, or how to configure a pipeline. So, Wesley, do you remember how many questions or kind of anything about the creating objects in a lakehouse or warehouse?
Not really from a code perspective anymore. I can't. My brain is actually really bad in remembering all of these things. But what I do remember is that indeed, like you mentioned, there is like lots of choice in Fabric. All these different artifacts that can be created, and it makes sense for you to try to make up like kind of a decision tree, like when should I use what, what are the different skills which which I will need. So obviously that when you're gonna apply for, when you create notebooks, that requires you to be knowledgeable about the Python programming language, and knows a bit, and need to know everything about Spark. Whereas if you work with, let's say, a data flow, it's kind of more intuitive, where you get like a visual interface and implement your data transformations over there. So in the end, for me, it makes sense to really experiment with all of these technologies, try to get a good understanding of it. And in our documentation, just one of the things that I wanted to share, we have actually a few documents that explain on, these are called decision guides, and I will share them also in the chat later on. Decision guides that help you to choose a data store. For example, are you going to choose a data warehouse, or are you going to use a lake house? What are the differences between those? And the same thing can be said also for the copy activity as part of a data pipeline versus a data flow versus working with Spark. There are some decision guides available on the documentation, in our Learn documentation, that clearly explain what are the differences and the similarities. So I'm going to share that also in the chat window a bit later.
Awesome. Yes. And I also saw a comment in the chat about, will you have to memorize all of the PySpark? I hope not. No, I've seen sample questions, and absolutely not. What you do need to know, though, are some really common ones, right? And big tip here, what did we tell you about how to leverage your exam? Microsoft Learn. I know we dropped it in the chat, but it's learn.microsoft.com/fabric or /training/fabric. Training Fabric will take you over to the Learn modules, all of the things that some folks have mentioned, that we have some videos walking through the different Learn modules. /fabric will take you over to the docs, right? For my old school folks, the books online is where your docs reference material lives. And that's definitely where you're going to find the most information about code. Who can remember how to do a SQL backup database command by heart? I'm sure one of you does, but I can never remember it. So I always go on docs and find the reference. It's the same thing for DAX. If I'm writing a DAX function, I need to go remember what the different parameters are. Definitely use Learn in the code questions if you don't feel really confident with it. That'd be my best advice.
And maybe one other thing that I want to add to this is, we are not going to ask you to write code in the exam. That's not what we are not what we're asking. So you might get a question where we already show you some code in the question, and then there's a few items that are left out, maybe a parameter or an argument or something, and that's then what you need to provide the right answer for. But we are not going to ask you to write code, which is a bit different if we talk about applied skills. We have that other mechanism as well, applied skills, where we actually ask you to do certain things, but that's not here in the exam, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's round out this really big skill group. There's copy data, transform data, and optimize performance. Copy and transform data feel really similar, but what you really need to understand here is, how are you getting data into your chosen lakehouse or warehouse? Are you using the copy data activity in a pipeline, using a data flow, using a notebook? All of these things are definitely covered on our Learn modules. I know, because I helped write them. But make sure that you walk through and you understand, actually accessing the platform and the tool is the most important thing. You can read this, but if you can't do it and you can't click around and experience the tool, you won't have complete success just reading about it. You also need to understand where you may be setting up pipelines, data flows, notebooks for automation, right? How do you keep your data fresh? You also need to know which one of those three options are best. Wesley kind of mentioned like decision trees. When should you use a data flow, a pipeline, or a notebook? Which one's the best for scalable data? If you're bringing in a terabyte of data, like, should you use a data flow? I don't know. I think that's a really good question. Now, transforming data, I think for our Power BI folks, makes a lot more sense, right? Star schema, star schema, star schema. We all know how important that is. But do you also know how to implement type 1 and type 2 slowly changing dimensions? You need to understand how to use bridge tables. If you have many-to-many relationships in your data, how do you resolve this? You need to understand how to aggregate or deaggregate tables. Are you combining tables with merge, join? Are you summarizing, expanding? You need to understand how to really cleanse and shape the data for downstream analytics. Anything to add on copy or transform data there, Wesley?
Yeah, maybe one thing, and that is here you see again that it's kind of, let's say, similar to what we have in PL300, but on the other side, it takes it also again to the next level, making it more like enterprise ready. Here you're gonna work with, for example, like mentioned, one of the items that you talked about was the slowly changing dimensions. That's probably something that normal business data analysts are not gonna be worried about, but here that's really important. That becomes really an important topic. So it's really taking that to the next level, let's say, and that's where we differentiate also with PL300, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's really important here is that this is still the next step up. The reason that Wesley mentioned that PL300 is a highly recommended first step is because you get the understanding of how to do this. And now you're taking it to the next level, right? You're directly influencing this. For those of you who are familiar with our exams, we also have the DP-203, which is an Azure data engineer role. And that is kind of similar to this. And some of you I saw were asking some questions about our favored DP-500. Let me see if I can remember this correctly. Azure Enterprise Data Analyst Associate. I don't remember the title perfectly. DP-500 also talks about a lot of these upstream analytics creation, just like we're talking about for this exam, except for it's really focused on Azure. Here, we're teaching you how to do it in the Fabric environment completely, right? It's the end-to-end analytics solution with Microsoft Fabric. So we're teaching you to go through all this. So the last section here is our optimized performance. In Fabric, optimizing performance is going to be bigger than doing it in Power BI. You're still going to need to know how to do it with Performance Analyzer, but you also need to understand things like capacity metrics. You need to understand what's happening with your reports. You also need to know some things that I don't think come to mind initially are understanding the implications of delta table file sizes. There's some really great advice out there on how to make sure you keep your delta file sizes in good shape. Otherwise, it can become a little unwieldy. You'll need to know about optimize write, V-order, and partitioning specifically to Delta Lake tables. Anything else you can think about for optimized performance there, Wesley?
Yeah, there is also a few tools which you're gonna use. The DAX Studio, for example, which can help you also to identify certain performance issues. So you also want to know about those tools, and it will also come back in the next section, by the way. But I suggest that we move on with the next question, the next poll question.
I agree. So let's say you're managing a set of Dataflow Gen 2 queries that are currently ingesting tables into a Fabric Lakehouse. you need to ensure that the tables are optimized for direct link connections that will be used by connected semantic models. What should you do? Should you A, apply an incremental refresh policy to the semantic model refreshes? B, run the vacuum command? C, use optimize to apply V-order? Or D, use shortcuts to the lakehouse tables from the semantic models? Also, just a quick note, Wesley, if you didn't catch this, or if anybody else, these are actually worded very similar to exam questions. For those of you that have gone through our Learn modules, you've probably seen that our knowledge check questions are not as rigorous. They may be something as easy like, hey, how do you manage table optimization for your semantic models? So these questions are supposed to help people feel a little bit more comfortable with the style of questions that you'll see on the exam.
I'm looking here at some of the answers which come in, and it looks like most of you indeed got it right again. It's indeed answer C. Use the optimize statement to apply the V order. So that looks good. I think that we have a couple of good candidates for the exam, Angie.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited to see you all be posting DP-600 Club on your favorite social platform. Don't forget to keep Wesley and I in mind when you successfully pass because of our exam cram today. Okay, we have 2 more sections to get through, and we want to make sure that you get to sample some questions, and we can't forget the study resources at the end. So let's power through our implement and manage semantic models, which is 20 to 25% of your exam. If you already have experience building scalable semantic models in Power BI, this looks a lot really familiar. Now you're going to be building scalable and reusable semantic models. You're going to be doing things like using Direct Lake, as well as including other reporting tools such as DAX Studio and Tabular Editor 2. These are external tools, and we do know that you are expected to use them. These are 2 widely known tools that are essential to any enterprise data analytics person. You'll also, similar to what I kind of mentioned before, you need to understand relationships using bridge tables, many-to-many relationships. You do need to know some DAX here, using DAX variables, different functions like iterators, windowing. Definitely you will need to know a little bit about these different windowing, filtering information functions. Calculation groups. One of our other peers shared that they got questions about calculation groups, dynamic strings and field parameters. Also knowing how to do large format semantic models and composite models. And lastly, everybody's favorite, dynamic row level security and object level security. Let's talk through optimizing enterprise scale semantic models as well. Back to, we're doing this upstream optimization. You also need to know how to implement performance improvements in queries and report visuals. You need to improve DAX performance using DAX Studio or optimizing the semantic model using Tabular Editor 2. Lastly, make sure you can improve report performance by implementing incremental refresh.
Yep, exactly. One other thing that I wanted to ask to respond to, because there is a question in the chat about, is Data Wrangler also on the exam? And the answer is no to that. Data Wrangler is a technology that helps you also to prepare data in the context of a data science solution, but that's not part of the exam.
Yeah, great point. Anything, and to that point, there is a lot in Fabric, right? We've got real-time analytics. We've got some data science, which is where Data Wrangler comes in. We've got Data Activator. There's a lot in Fabric. This is scoped specifically to creating analytics assets for end users, right? Think about that prepare and serve data. That's pretty much the big way to talk about the analytics engineer role. Wesley, before we move to the question, do you have any extra advice for this skill group that you wanted to share?
Maybe one advice. So DAX programming language, data analysis expressions. It's potentially something that is going to pop up on the exam. Again, you will not have to write code. That's not what we're asking for, but you might get questions that show you already a complete statement where you need to fill in some additional functions, for example. I urge you to look at some videos and some online learning materials that we have available on our Learn website. And one specifically is about DAX videos. There are a few DAX videos available. I believe they're called DAX 101 and Advanced DAX. Where you can really skill up on this programming language and really understand the usage of that programming language. And I will share also the link to the chat.
Yes, absolutely. All right, so let's move into our next question. You're using DAX Studio to connect to and troubleshoot a Microsoft Power BI report that is performing poorly. We all know what is poor, but that aside, we've agreed that it's a poorly performing report. Now you need to capture the queries generated by the report. Which feature in DAX Studio should you enable? A, all queries trace. B, query builder. C, query plan tracing. Or D, server timing trace. Let's see. I see a couple votes rolling right in.
And we are not going to use this to blame the database administrator. That's not what we are using. That's not what we are going to do here.
As a previous DBA, it's always the network. Somebody in the chat, back me up. It is always the network. All right, I see a handful of votes coming in. I feel like a little less. Maybe people are not as confident with this one. What do you think, Wesley? Have you used DAX Studio yourself?
Yeah, I've used it a few times, indeed also to troubleshoot some performance problems. And it's interesting to have that tool available to do the investigation, because otherwise, where to start? But here the correct answer is actually answer A. There is a feature in DAX Studio that allows you to look at all the query traces, and basically it takes all the DAX statements that are executing on your system, and it's even outside of the currently opened up DAX project. So that includes also Power BI, of course, and it can be used to get a trace of that, and then you can replay those statements individually, and then from there start to look at things like the server times and execution times, etc.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for that firsthand advice, because I have only kind of opened DAX Studio. I am not a DP-600 candidate. I am a proud PL300 club. All right, last group, explore and analyze data. Also 20 to 25% of your exam. So again, yes, be able to plan it, but most importantly, be able to ingest, shape, and serve data, and then do some extra query and analytics here, right? Perform exploratory analytics, query data by using SQL. So performing exploratory analytics, the skills here included are related to understanding the difference and being able to perform different types of analysis, like descriptive and diagnostic, and being able to incorporate findings from prescriptive and predictive analytics. I know those are really a whole lot of words, but there are 4 words to define a lot of different ways to work with the analytics. So really make sure you're looking into descriptive, diagnostic, prescriptive, and predictive analytics. Understanding those fundamentals will help you in this section. When we're talking about querying data by using SQL. We're talking about being able to query your lakehouse or your warehouse either using directly SQL, or for those of you that may not feel as comfortable with SQL, using the visual query editor. This is a real game changer. Just like with Fabric, you can use data flows where you may not feel comfortable using PySpark in a notebook. You can use the visual query editor to do mostly what you want to do in SQL without having to write the code. This is also where I mentioned that you need to be able to connect to and query semantic models using that XMLA endpoint, and understanding that you might be doing this with an external tool like Tabular Editor too. Any extra things you want to add here, Wesley?
Not specifically to the exam, but I actually was surprised with this visual query editor. My experience also goes back like 20 years ago when I was implementing SQL queries as a developer. And that's where I feel home, let's say. But then I actually got surprised with this visual query editor and the amount of features that it actually brings. It's actually very interesting if you compare that to other visual query editors that we had in the past. This one is actually a really interesting one. But I can't remember anymore from the exam whether I got questions on the visual query editor. Probably I didn't. But there might be SQL queries on the exam. That might happen. Again, you will not need to write SQL queries yourself, but you might get a question where there is already a query, and now you need to fill in the gaps.
You know what, Wesley, you just said something that gives me a really good point that I want to share about the exam before we release the last question for this. When you are taking the exam, for everybody who goes out to the study guide, you look at all of the different skills. You'll see these 4 groups that we talked about, and then the sub skills here. When you look at every single line, you are going to get 20 to 25% questions across that. So you may see a skill listed under perform exploratory analytics that you don't end up with a question for. So you may get questions for both querying using SQL and visual query editor, or you may only get one. So it's really important to kind of think about, yes, you need to know all of this, but it's okay if you don't know every single piece. Back to our point, it's okay to guess if you're at the end of time and you're not sure. Better to take that question. All right, let's roll the next poll question. If I can advance the slide. You have a Fabric tenant that contains a workspace named Workspace 1. Workspace 1 contains a lakehouse named Lakehouse 1. You plan to use Microsoft SQL Server Management Studio to write SQL queries against Lakehouse 1. Where can you find the SQL connection string for Lakehouse 1? A, in the tenant settings under Microsoft Fabric. B, in the workspace settings under Azure Connections. C, in the Lakehouse settings under Copy SQL connection string. And D, in the workspace settings under Data Connections. While everybody's taking the time to answer that in the chat, absolutely good eye, good job already running the practice assessment in less than 24 hours of release. These questions are from the practice assessment that you can go access. You get a little sneak preview of a handful of these questions, but there are 50 questions. And if you take it again, you will get different questions. There's a big bank of questions available. So it's okay if you're seeing a few of them today that you may see again. This time I see a lot more confident voting. Let's see, which question is winning here, Wesley?
Yeah, this is a question where almost everybody is answering it correctly, or at least 70+%. Correct answer here is indeed that you can find the SQL connection string to the Lakehouse in the Lakehouse itself under the copy SQL connection string. So there's a setting there in the Lakehouse itself that you can find where you'll be able to find the SQL connection string, and then you can distribute that to anybody. Of course, they need to have the permission to connect. But you can use that in SQL Server Management Studio. You can use that in the Azure Data Studio. You can use that even in Excel. Any application that can talk to SQL can actually use these endpoints to send queries to Microsoft Fabric Lakehouse. So indeed, the correct answer is C.
Awesome. I think you're right. We're going to have some Fabric analytics engineers real soon. Well, I guess not until March when everybody gets your results, right? All right. So we've done a lot. We've covered a lot, and we have about 30 minutes left. So I want to make sure that we give you the study resources to actually learn this stuff before we open it for Q&A. You with me, Wesley?
Yep.
All right. So first thing first, if you haven't seen, go jumpstart your career with the Fabric Career Hub. On this Fabric Learn Together, so aka.ms/learn together, there are several things that you can go study. And my slide just advanced. Real time for real time, right? Go out there. There are learning rooms. There are all sorts of things that you can learn about the different roles in Fabric, how to get help. These learning rooms are going to help you for mentors. You can ask real questions from real experts. There's some really great people, real. There's some really great people over in the Fabric learning rooms. Check them out. Which the Fabric learning rooms are in the Fabric Career Hub, to be clear. As for study tips, since my slide is here, make sure that you schedule time to study. All well and good intentions, but if you don't schedule the time, you know life is going to get in the way. Practice all tasks in the study guide. Really great advice here. Go out to the study guide and click the print button. Even if you just save it as a PDF, you can go through it and then mark it off as you feel comfortable with each one. Practice navigating Microsoft Learn. We've already told you a handful of times, but make sure you know where those different pieces are. I see a lot of questions on where is this in Learn. Absolutely make sure when you're going out there, you're checking where your weak spot may be. If it's the PySpark or DAX code, make sure you're taking a look and seeing what is there. Our practice tests, absolutely, take them. Learning the Fabric learning rooms. And then, Wesley, I feel like this one's yours. Schedule the exam as a forcing function. What do you mean by that?
How do you mean?
What is this? Scheduling it as a forcing function. Do you schedule the exam before you're ready?
Yeah, I do that. Just to challenge myself a bit. So even if I'm not ready yet, I just schedule it and I put it like a few weeks or a few months ahead in my schedule, and I really book the exam. And what I then do is I get a bit nervous about that, of course, because it's now in my agenda. And then I start to come up with a plan and start to work backwards, taking into account the study guide, of course. That's my mental model of navigating and preparing towards the exam. But again, I like to be challenged, and I like to get a bit nervous about it, get a bit stressed about it. But it helps also to focus and do the things which are right to do for yourself if you decide to do the exam. So definitely worth to check out. Now, one other thing that I wanted to talk about is the learning rooms. We have this online, these 9 episodes that I think they are already taken place, if I'm not mistaken. They were delivered. They were kind of like expert led live walkthroughs that cover also the Learn modules to prepare you for that upcoming DP-600 exam. And these 9 episodes were delivered in both India and America time zones. And I believe that all of these materials are still available online for you to consume and to read and to watch. And they're really expert sessions. So highly recommended also to browse those things and to watch and to consume those things.
Yeah, I definitely saw a few people found their way to those. I know we just finished those first 9 Learn Live, Learn Together sessions that are all hosted on the same YouTube channel, if I remember correctly.
Yep.
And they're all on Learn under shows as well. And I think that there will be some more coming out as well. So if you missed this, absolutely, and you want it live, that's the way to do it. All right, so just in a quick summary, we talked about certification path, we talked about exam preparation, we talked about the skills on the exam, and we covered some learning resources. Again, I just want to send the message home that while we're going to have a lot of content on Learn, both docs and training content, and we're going to have all of these great sessions available, there is no replacement for hands-on, real live, interactive use of the tool and doing the specific tasks, right? So back to practicing the tasks, perform exploratory analytics in Fabric. If you don't know what that means, you're going to need to look up what exploratory analytics is first and understand, okay, well, how do I do descriptive analytics in Fabric? I think that's all I have. Last things, Wesley, before we move to questions, do you have any last tips? And actually, I'll just put the question slide up and let the questions start rolling in while you give
Yeah.
any last advice.
Yeah, to add to that, so again, practice if you can. I know that not every company is going to allow Microsoft Fabric and is going to enable that for everybody in the organization, but if you have the opportunity to play around with it, try it. And I believe that we have also, if you come into trainings, we share also sometimes like an environment where you can start to play around. That's available in trainings. I'm not sure if it's available also publicly online. That's something I don't know. But try to practice and then try to find some data to play around with. There is lots of open data sources available online, and get it in and try to play around. It's really interesting to use these technologies and to sometimes get into problems, and from problems you can learn. That's how I approach it, basically.
Absolutely. Great point, Wesley, about the not everybody will have Fabric. So I'm trying to get the link, which is really fun while we're trying to do this, but I'm going to find the link on our exercises. For those of you who have already done our Microsoft Learn modules, you've probably walked through some of our exercises. And if you already have Fabric enabled, then great. But we also have instructions on how to create a free Microsoft 365 developer account so that you can have your own environment and then use the Microsoft Fabric trial so that you can get your experience doing these real world tasks. And I think we're just waiting to see if there's some questions. If for any reason you're all super shy, we can walk through some of the extra practice test questions that we have. But let's see what pulls in. Wesley, I'll let you look at some questions while I try to get this link.
Yep. There is a, let's see. Yeah, no, there is not any question that I can that's not coming up. Okay. All right, let's go ahead with another live question, knowledge question.
I'll let you read that while I get this link.
Okay, so the question is, like, you have a Fabric tenant, it contains a lake house, and you plan to use a Fabric notebook and PySpark as well to read some sales data, and then save the data as a delta table named sales. The table must be partitioned by the sales year and the quarter. So what you do is you load the sales data to a data frame in PySpark. You name it DF. It's just a variable name, and then it contains already the year column and a quarter column. What is the command that you should run next? Now, I'm not going to read the answers here because that's a bit technical. But what is your choice here? What kind of command should you run next to make sure that the table is partitioned correctly and that it is saved as a delta table?
Yeah, I think the first thing I noticed reading this is two of the questions have format delta and two or answers, and two of them have format parquet.
Mhm.
And so I think this is really where we were talking about eliminating the right or the wrong answers first.
Yeah.
So, well, wrong answers first. So like if you know that you want this to be saved as a delta table, you probably need to pick A or B. Then the question comes looking at it, which one you want to, how, like if you look, this is where people feel like they're getting tripped up. So if you look at the differences between A and B, the differences are as small as, let me get the laser pointer here, as small as a beginning and end quote here, right? So let's see who got it right. Looks like pretty much everybody figured out that it was B. So clearly you have written a couple lines of PySpark. So great job.
So that's what we mean. Like you have to know a bit about PySpark, but it's not like you have to write the code yourself. But of course, this can be also tricky. As you can see, the answers look pretty similar, but which one is then correct? So that's how we validate the skills upon the exam.
Awesome. All right. Let's see if we have any good questions coming in. Otherwise, I see a bunch of answers. I see awesome job for our folks helping get the links out. Are DAX Studio and Tabular Editor 2 the only external tools we need to study is a good question. And yes, as far as I can remember, we don't have anything else. Wesley, do you remember?
Don't think so. No, no.
Awesome. All right, now that I just got all the questions cleared, just still looking around. I think let's do another practice question. So this one is also in the prepare and serve data functional group, which the last one was as well. So kind of remembering that you're going to need code in that prepare and serve data because it depends on which way you're doing it. So you have a Fabric workspace that contains a complex semantic model for a Microsoft Power BI report. You need to optimize the semantic model for analytical queries and use denormalization to reduce the model complexity and the number of joins between tables. Which tables should you denormalize? I really like this question because when we were first working on the exam, we had a lot of people asking, what does denormalize mean? What does deaggregate mean? And these are some fundamental data analytics processes that we aren't necessarily going to cover in DP-600 specific content, right? We expect that you're coming in to this with some basic understanding of data analytics. So if you're not finding everything, it's okay if you go look elsewhere. All right, so let's see who got our answer. We did not get very many votes, and the winner in the chat was fact tables on the same level of granularity. So everybody's going to have to go look up denormalization and snowflake dimension tables, because a snowflake dimension is a set of normalized tables for a single business entity. You need to implement a proper star schema, usually requiring denormalizing the set of tables you have to create the single table that contains all of the necessary attributes, right? Wide, flatter table in this case. That's what denormalizing is. For our SQL folks, you want all these little tiny tables. And that's true for our star schemas too. But sometimes it gets too snowflakey, too many little tables off of each other, right? shrink it back down.
Yeah, and that gives us potentially some problems if you're dealing with large quantities of data and complexer models, because traversing all of these relationships takes, of course, a bit more time, and it gets a bit more complex. So there are actually reasons to get rid of snowflake dimension tables, and let's say make it more a kind of a a star schema. It's easier to navigate. It's easier to work with, and yeah, it's generally speaking a bit better to organize, and a bit better also to store, because there is better opportunities for compression, etc.
Yeah, and since A and B and D all kind of got pretty spread answers, I think this idea of granularity is coming up, is really confusing. So we kind of understand that there's the fact table in the middle, and then we have our dimension tables hanging off of our fact table, right? And then a snowflake would be more dimension tables hanging off of our direct fact related dimension tables, right?
Mhm.
So this level of granularity, this is, I think, confusing in the chat or in the poll. And I think, I don't know, Wesley, do you feel like you can talk to data granularity? It is really hard for me too.
Yeah, it is. It is hard. I can talk about it from a fact perspective, fact tables, and that have a certain granularity. Um, Basically, it's about like what is the lowest amount of detail that you're gonna have in your tables. Um, and So, for example, if you work in let's say an IoT system, you have lots of IoT sensors, lots of data that comes in at different frequencies, different intervals. Could be that you have data that comes in at the millisecond level. But then the question is here, like, is that really the granularity that you need for your analytics, for your report that you want to create? Probably not. So you might say, okay, I'm gonna put up the granularity up to the second or up to the minute, depending on what you're gonna do. That's how I look at granularity in the context of fact tables.
I'm so glad you were here to answer that question. Data granularity is very hard for me to understand too. It's okay if you have a weak spot, folks. There was a question asked in chat, and there was another question earlier asked about the differences between DP-500, DP-600, and also Fabric versus Synapse. So I just want to take a quick moment to talk about this.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely, there's nothing going different about Azure. Azure Synapse is going to still stay here, right? For those of you who have been around long enough to go from on-prem to Azure to software as a service, you're going to know that we've always had different levels for meeting people at their different needs. For everybody who's on-prem, you're still on-prem. You eventually moved to Azure, and you probably had Azure Infrastructure as a Service, where you had a virtual VM that you installed SQL Server on directly and did all of the management of the VM that you had access to and everything on the VM. Azure SQL Database and Azure SQL Managed Instance gave you that next level of removed administration, right? So you took the load off of you, put it on Microsoft, and now you can just manage in the database and the data. So Fabric is a software as a service. We have removed a lot of the elements that are required in Azure Synapse for you to do all of this extra management, and we're giving it to you in an easier way. We're also giving you a lot of this low code, right? So we're really expecting to see Fabric be for the people who need enterprise solutions with lower code requirements, as opposed to the more hands-on granular necessity of Azure Synapse that you need to do, which is also kind of answering the question about our DP-500 versus DP-600. The DP-600 role is a little bit more focused on analytics engineering, whereas DP-500 was a little bit like Power BI plus. Fabric takes it a little bit further. So that's kind of all I'm going to say about the differences.
May I also comment a bit on this? First, to make sure that everybody's on the same page. Synapse Analytics is not going to go away. So we are going to continue to support it, and there's going to be continued investment in it. So Fabric is not going to go away. We have now Fabric, which is the new kid on the block, which gives us the software as a service, like Angie said, which gives you better flexibility, etc., etc. But again, Synapse itself is not going to go away. But then if we look at it from a certification perspective, it was announced, I think last week or the week before, that DP-500 is going to retire. So the exam DP-500 is going to retire on April 3rd. And it's going to be
30th.
30th. Yeah, indeed. So and DP-600 is then the next thing, of course, what we're all about to go for.
Thank you for adding that extra context. Since we're still talking about exams, I think the last question we've really had here is how difficult is DP-600 versus DP-203, the data engineering in Azure? My dear colleague works on that, and I stay very far away from his content. Wesley, do you teach DP-203? Do you have any insights there?
Yeah, I teach the course. I've of course taken the exam long time ago already, even when it was still DP-200 and DP-201. That were the predecessors of that one. But I've taken DP-203. This, I would say, the DP-600 is gonna be a bit more challenging, because the let's say the domain and the focus area is just way larger compared to what we had in DP-203. DP-203, if I'm not mistaken, is about pipelines, data factory, and these kind of things. Also, Synapse is part of that, I believe. But again, Fabric and the enterprise features that we have that covers quite a big area, a big skills area. So I would say that, yeah, DP-600 is going to be, let's say, a bit more challenging compared to DP-203, but not impossible. It's not impossible to do it. So don't be disappointed with what I'm saying here. It's just like, it's a different thing, right? And just go for it. Just book it. Just book it.
Do it.
Just do it.
That is, I realize it's easier for us to say as Microsoft employees, but I will say, being able to validate your skills, being able to put that out and share that you have done this, you have taken on this huge undertaking. This is no small feat, right? Go ahead and do that. And I think you're going to feel really rewarded when you pass. I am not an exam salesperson, so don't expect it from me. But I do know, if you need a little peace of mind, that there is something, Exam Replay. I don't even know the specifics about it. Go check it out for yourself. It's something about it's like insurance, not insurance. That's a bad choice of words, but it gives you an extra chance, I think. I think we're going to wrap with this final question that I saw. That, of course, I can't give any official word about, but if there's any professional level certification planned for Fabric in the future. Right now, DP-600 is our only Microsoft Fabric analytics engineer certification as regards to our traditional exams that you've seen. If you haven't already checked out our applied skills credentials, which have ranged across all of the different technology solution areas, definitely keep an eye out there. Fabric is very popular. Just keep watching. And don't forget to go book your exam. Like Wesley said, just put it on the calendar. Get ready. I don't think I have anything else. Wesley, you just want to say goodbye to these kind of folks today?
Yeah, I would say to everybody that participated in the chat and watched this session, hope you enjoyed it. Hope it was valuable spend of your time, and I wish you really good luck with preparing for the exam, and of course taking the exam. And let us know or put it online when you pass your exam, because it's something that you can be very proud of if you pass the exam. I can tell you. So that's going to be it, folks, for today. Thanks again for spending the time with us. It was really nice. Thank you very much.
Best said. Bye, everybody.